"We're eliminating your position effective immediately," Derek announced with a smirk, standing at the head of the conference table where our entire team sat in stunned silence. "Budget cuts," he added casually, as if erasing my 4 years of dedication was as trivial as ordering lunch. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch my reaction. Instead of the tears they expected, I stood up calmly, smoothed my blazer, and smiled. "Actually, perfect timing," I replied, grabbing my personal laptop. Then I walked straight to my car. Monday morning, the office was completely empty. Not a single person showed up. 4 years ago, when I first walked through the doors of Meridian Tech, I felt like I had finally found my place in the professional world. The company was still small then, just 40 employees packed into an office that smelled perpetually of coffee and possibility. I started as a marketing coordinator, the only person besides the marketing director in our tiny department. Josefina Martinez, my first boss Greg, said, "You're going to help put us on the map." His enthusiasm was infectious, and I threw myself into learning everything about our software products for small businesses. Our flagship program helped mom and pop shops compete with larger chains by streamlining their inventory and customer relationship management. I remember the first time I stayed until midnight working on a campaign launch. The next morning, Greg stopped by my desk with an extra coffee and a sincere thank you. That was Meridian's culture. Back then, we worked hard because we believed in what we were doing. We were helping small business owners across America keep their dreams alive. By my second year, I had been promoted to marketing strategist. Our team had grown to 5 people, and I had spearheaded 2 product launches that exceeded our targets by 30%. The CEO at the time, Linda Fairchild, knew everyone by name and made a point to acknowledge our victories, big and small. "That customer acquisition strategy was brilliant," she told me after my presentation at the quarterly meeting. "You understand exactly who we're trying to reach." Her words meant everything to me. I had found not just a job, but a purpose. My apartment began filling with little reminders of my Meridian family. A photo of our team volunteering at the local food bank. A coffee mug Sam from sales had given me with Marketing Wizard printed on it. A plant from Taylor in customer support when I had been promoted again to senior marketing strategist. Then came the announcement that changed everything. TechFusion, a corporate giant with offices in 15 cities, was acquiring Meridian. Linda tried to reassure us all with talk of expanded resources and growth opportunities, but I noticed how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes during the company meeting. "This will be good for us," Harper from HR said as we grabbed lunch together that day, though she sounded like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Within 3 months, Linda announced her decision to step back from the CEO role. We all knew it wasn't her choice. The new leadership team arrived soon after, bringing with them sleek presentations about synergy and corporate restructuring. Derek Barnes was introduced as our new marketing director, transferred from TechFusion headquarters. From our first meeting, something felt off about Derek. He was impeccably dressed in suits that cost more than my monthly rent, with perfectly styled hair and a smile that never seemed genuine. "I'm excited to see what this little team can do," he said, emphasizing little in a way that made it clear he wasn't impressed. He dismissed our successful small business marketing strategies as quaint and immediately began pushing for us to target more substantial clients. I tried to explain that our entire platform was built for small businesses, that our success came from deeply understanding their needs. "That's the old Meridian," he replied. "The new Meridian needs to think bigger." Over the next several months, I watched with growing unease as everything that made our company special began to erode. The casual Friday lunches disappeared. The open-door policy with management was replaced with formal meeting requests. 3 longtime employees were let go for performance reasons, though all had received excellent reviews just months earlier. Despite the changing environment, I kept my head down and worked harder. Our marketing automation platform launch was approaching, and I was determined to make it successful. I stayed late, came in early, and poured everything I had into understanding what our small business customers needed from this new product. The launch exceeded all projections, bringing in a 45% increase in new customer signups. I expected at least some acknowledgement from Derek, but instead he questioned why we hadn't targeted larger corporations. You're missing the bigger picture, Josephina, he said during our team meeting. TechFusion doesn't want to be bothered with small accounts. That night, as I was gathering my things to leave well after most of the office had emptied, I noticed Derek's office light was still on. His door was ajar, and I could hear him on a conference call. I wasn't planning to eavesdrop, but when I heard phase out the small business products, I froze. Yes, we're on track, Derek was saying. The team doesn't suspect anything. We've already begun migrating the best features to the TechFusion platform. Once that's complete, we can announce the unfortunate business decision to discontinue Meridian's product line. My heart pounded as I quietly stepped away from the door. This wasn't just a culture change, it was deliberate sabotage. TechFusion hadn't acquired Meridian to help it grow. They wanted to eliminate a competitor and absorb our technology. The next day, I requested access to our quarterly financial reports for marketing research purposes. After some hesitation, our finance coordinator granted me limited access. What I found shocked me to my core. Our most successful products were suddenly showing dramatic revenue decreases, despite our customer numbers remaining steady. Someone was manipulating the figures to make Meridian look like it was failing. I was staring at these reports, trying to make sense of the discrepancies, when an email notification popped up on my screen. It was a company-wide announcement about exciting changes to better serve our clients. The email detailed how several of Meridian's key features would be migrating to the TechFusion ecosystem. Reading between the lines, it was exactly what I had overheard Derek discussing. They were stripping our products and preparing to shut us down. As I looked around the office at my colleague Sam laughing by the coffee machine, Taylor patiently walking a customer through a technical issue, Harper reviewing employee benefits, a knot formed in my stomach. None of them knew their jobs were likely on the chopping block. I closed the financial report and opened a new document. If TechFusion was planning to destroy everything we'd built, I needed proof. And I needed to find out exactly how far this deception went. The next morning, I arrived at the office an hour earlier than usual. The building was nearly empty, with just a few early risers in the development department coding away with headphones on. I had spent most of the night researching TechFusion's corporate history, and what I discovered made me feel ill. This wasn't their first acquisition that ended with the purchased company mysteriously failing. Over the past 6 years, TechFusion had acquired 7 smaller tech companies. In each case, the pattern was disturbingly similar. Promises of autonomy and growth, followed by leadership changes, product migrations, and eventually, the shuttering of the acquired company due to market challenges or shifting corporate priorities. I needed more concrete evidence about what was happening at Meridian specifically, so I began documenting everything. Each time Derek canceled a marketing initiative that had previously been approved, I noted it. When budget freezes mysteriously appeared for our most successful products, I recorded the details. I started keeping a separate work journal with dates, times, and verbatim quotes from meetings. As I was compiling this information, I remembered Wesley Graham, Meridian's original founder. He had stepped back from daily operations after the acquisition, but retained 15% ownership and a seat on the board. Wesley had always been passionate about the company's mission to help small businesses. If anyone would care about what was happening, it would be him. Making contact without raising suspicions wouldn't be easy. Derek had made it clear that communications with board members should go through proper channels, meaning himself or the new CEO, James Wilson. I needed a legitimate reason to reach out. The opportunity came when I discovered that Wesley was scheduled to attend our upcoming quarterly review. I prepared an exceptional presentation on small business customer success stories, knowing it would resonate with him. After the meeting, I managed to catch him alone in the hallway. "That was an impressive presentation, Josefina," he said, extending his hand. "You clearly understand what Meridian has always been about." "Thank you, Mr. Graham. Our small business customers are the heart of what we do. I just wish everyone saw the value in that." Something in my tone must have caught his attention because his expression shifted. Having some challenges with the new direction? I chose my words carefully. "Let's just say I'm concerned about some decisions that seem counterproductive to our core business model. If you ever have time for coffee, I'd value your perspective." Wesley gave me his personal email address, and we arranged to meet the following week at a cafe several blocks from the office. In the meantime, I continued gathering evidence, Derek had been implementing suspicious changes, customer data transfers from our servers to TechFusion's, code migrations, and unexplained price increases for our small business plans that seemed designed to drive customers away. He was also working to isolate me from other departments. All interdepartmental requests need to go through me now, he announced in a team meeting. It's more efficient. In reality, it meant he could control information flow and prevent people from noticing patterns. What Derek didn't know was that I had built strong relationships across the company over my 4 years there. Sam from sales continued to share customer feedback with me. Taylor from customer support sent me screenshots of complaints about the recent changes. And Alex from the legal department had become a trusted confidant after we bonded over our shared love of mystery novels during company retreats. Alex was particularly helpful, though he didn't know it at the time. They've been asking legal to review a lot of intellectual property transfers, he mentioned during one of our lunch breaks. It's strange because they're moving ownership of systems we developed here over to TechFusion entities. Makes me wonder if they're planning something major. I began secretly recording Derek's more questionable comments and directives during meetings. Connecticut, where our office was located, was a one-party consent state for recordings, so I knew I was acting within legal boundaries. I captured him saying things like, "Customer satisfaction isn't our priority right now, just make the changes and let support deal with the fallout," and "The small business market is dead weight we need to shed." The most damning evidence came to me accidentally. I had stayed late again, trying to salvage a marketing campaign for our small business users after Derek had slashed the budget. I needed to print some materials, and went to use the printer in the executive area since it was the only color printer in the office. As I approached, I saw a document sitting in the output tray. The header read Operation Absorb, Meridian Asset Integration Timeline. I knew I shouldn't look at it, but the words employee reduction caught my eye. I quickly took pictures of the document with my phone before anyone saw me. The memo detailed a 6-month plan to systematically strip Meridian of its valuable assets, transfer its intellectual property to TechFusion, and then declare the subsidiary unprofitable. The most shocking part was the section titled Workforce Elimination, which outlined how to terminate employees with minimal severance and legal exposure. My hands shook as I placed the document back where I found it and returned to my desk. This wasn't just about business strategy anymore, this was about people's livelihoods. Sam had just bought his first house. Taylor was a single parent with 2 kids. Harper was helping support her parents' medical bills. The next day, as I was still processing what I'd discovered, Derek called me into his office. "I need you to prepare documentation for transferring all our marketing assets to the TechFusion servers," he said without looking up from his computer. "May I ask why?" I kept my voice neutral despite my racing heart. "Centralization of resources," he replied dismissively. "It's a directive from above." I nodded and left his office, then immediately backed up copies of all our marketing materials to my personal secure cloud storage. If they were planning to erase Meridian's identity, I wasn't going to make it easy for them. That evening, I met with Wesley at the cafe as planned. After some casual conversation, I carefully shared my concerns. "I've noticed some troubling patterns," I began, showing him screenshots of the manipulated financial reports. "Our products aren't failing, they're being made to look like they're failing." Wesley's expression darkened as I walked him through the evidence I had gathered. When I showed him the photos of the Operation Absorb document, he became very still. They specifically promised me that Meridian would maintain its identity and mission," he said quietly. "I should have known better. This is what James did at Innovatech before they brought him to TechFusion." "There's more," I said hesitantly. "I believe they're planning to shut down Meridian completely while transferring all its valuable intellectual property to TechFusion, and they're going to let everyone go." Wesley looked up sharply. "How certain are you?" "I have recordings, documents, and witness accounts. It's not just speculation." He was silent for a long moment, then looked me directly in the eyes. "Josephina, what you're describing could potentially constitute corporate fraud, especially if they're manipulating financial reports to shareholders. This is serious." "I know," I replied. "That's why I came to you. You still care about what Meridian stands for." "I do," he confirmed. "And I still have enough voting power to cause problems for them if they're doing something illegal." He paused, thinking. I need time to consult with some people. Keep gathering evidence, but be extremely careful. These kinds of corporate raiders don't play fair when they're exposed. As I walked back to my apartment that evening, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore, but I also knew the stakes had just gotten much higher. The next few weeks were the most stressful of my professional life. Each day, I walked into the office wondering if today would be the day I was discovered. Derek seemed increasingly suspicious of my activities, often appearing suddenly behind my desk or questioning why I was talking to people from other departments. I thought I made it clear that interdepartmental communication goes through proper channels, he said one afternoon after seeing me talking with Alex from legal in the break room. We were just discussing the company softball team, I replied smoothly, though in reality, Alex had been telling me about more intellectual property transfers he'd been asked to process. I needed allies within the company, people I could trust completely. After careful consideration, I approached Sam, Taylor, and Harper individually, choosing my words with extreme caution. I've noticed some concerning trends in how TechFusion is managing Meridian, I told each of them. Have you seen anything that seems off to you? Their responses were telling. Sam mentioned that several long-term clients had been pressured to switch to TechFusion products. Taylor revealed that customer support had been instructed to delay responses to small business clients. Harper, most disturbingly, shared that HR had been asked to review all employee contracts for termination clauses. They told me it was just a routine legal review, Harper said, her voice low as we sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office. But they only wanted to know about termination requirements, nothing else. And they asked how much it would cost to close the office with minimum notice. With each conversation, I carefully assessed their reactions before deciding how much to reveal. By the end of the week, I had formed a core group of 4 trusted colleagues who were all equally concerned about what was happening. We need to document everything, I told them, during a meeting at my apartment on a Saturday morning. Every unusual request, every system change, every conversation that doesn't feel right. Alex, who had quickly become the most valuable ally due to his legal expertise, outlined what kind of evidence would be most useful. We need to establish a pattern of deliberate deception, he explained. Financial manipulation, intellectual property theft, fraudulent communications to shareholders or customers. These are the serious issues that could trigger regulatory involvement. The toll of living this double life began to show. I lost 8 pounds in 3 weeks. Sleep became a luxury I rarely enjoyed, and when I did sleep, I often jolted awake from dreams of being confronted by Derek or losing everything I'd worked for. Despite my efforts to be careful, tensions continued to escalate at work. During a department meeting, Derek singled me out when discussing decreased engagement on our marketing campaigns. Perhaps if Josephina spent less time chatting with other departments and more time focused on her actual responsibilities, we'd see better results, he said with a thin smile. I bit back the response I wanted to give, and instead replied calmly, "The data shows our engagement is down because the recent product changes have alienated our core customer base. I've prepared a report with recommendations on how to address this." Derek's eyes narrowed slightly. "Just implement the strategy we discussed. We don't need additional reports." Later that day, I was called to a meeting with Barbara Lewis, the CFO who had come from TechFusion along with Derek and James. Her office was immaculate, with not a paper out of place and a view of the city that emphasized her senior position. "Josephina," she began after I sat down, "I understand you've been asking questions about our financial reporting." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. "I've been trying to better align our marketing metrics with financial outcomes," I replied. "It helps us target our efforts more effectively." Barbara studied me for a long moment. A word of advice from someone who's been through corporate transitions before. The people who survive are the ones who keep their heads down and follow the new direction without question. She paused. Those who dig too deeply into matters that don't concern them often find themselves suddenly redundant. The threat wasn't even thinly veiled. As I left her office, I knew my time was running short. They were suspicious, and I needed to accelerate my plans. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Wesley. "Can you meet me tonight? It's important." We met at a small restaurant far from both the office and the usual spots where Meridian employees socialized. Wesley looked tired, the lines on his face deeper than they had been just weeks ago. "I've been reviewing the evidence you shared," he said once we were seated in a private corner, "and I've had some discussions with other board members I trust. What's happening isn't just unethical, parts of it may cross into illegal territory, especially the financial misrepresentations." He took a deep breath before continuing. "I've learned something else. TechFusion is planning to announce a complete restructuring of Meridian next Monday. In reality, they're shutting down the company entirely. Most employees will be terminated with just 2 weeks severance, regardless of how long they've been with the company." The news hit me like a physical blow, even though I had suspected it was coming. "Do you know the details?" Wesley nodded grimly. "James is flying in Sunday night. They've arranged for security to be present on Monday morning. They're going to announce it as a business necessity due to market conditions and poor performance." His expression hardened. "They've been systematically sabotaging Meridian's performance for months to justify this outcome." "So we have 4 days," I said, mentally calculating what we could accomplish in such a short time. "4 days," Wesley confirmed. "I've contacted some people at the SEC about the financial discrepancies, and I've called for an emergency board meeting on Saturday, citing concerns about fiduciary responsibility. But I need your complete evidence package to make the strongest case possible." That night, I barely slept at all. Instead, I organized every piece of evidence we had collected, creating a comprehensive document that laid out the entire scheme in chronological order, supported by emails, recordings, financial reports, and witness statements. By morning, I had a devastating case against TechFusion's leadership. I shared the final document with our core group, and we spent Thursday and Friday gathering any additional evidence we could find. Alex discovered that TechFusion had already drafted press releases about Meridian's unfortunate closure due to market conditions. Sam found evidence that several of our biggest clients had been offered special discounts to switch to TechFusion products, with the transition scheduled for the week after the planned shutdown announcement. On Friday afternoon, Derek called me into his office. As I sat across from him, I noticed a termination letter partially visible under a folder on his desk. My name was at the top. "Josephina," he began with fake concern in his voice. "I've noticed you seemed stressed lately. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I assured him with a smile I didn't feel. "Just focused on our upcoming campaigns." Good," he nodded. "By the way, we're having a mandatory team meeting on Monday morning. Everyone needs to be there. It's about some exciting new directions for the company." The lie was so transparent, knowing what I now knew, that I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded seriously. "I'll be there." As I walked back to my desk, I sent a message to our group. "Monday morning. Be prepared." That evening, Wesley called to confirm that the emergency board meeting was set for Saturday afternoon. "Some board members are flying in specifically for this," he told me. "They're taking the allegations very seriously." I spent Friday night finalizing our contingency plans. If things went as we hoped, TechFusion would be stopped before they could dismantle Meridian. If not, we at least had enough evidence to ensure there would be consequences for their actions, and hopefully better treatment for the employees. Saturday morning, as I prepared to send Wesley the final evidence package for the board meeting, I received an unexpected text from Taylor. "Derek and security going through your desk right now. They know." My stomach dropped. Somehow, they had figured out what I was doing. Thankfully, I had been careful never to keep any sensitive documents at my desk, but the fact that they were searching my workspace meant they had decided to act against me immediately. I quickly sent the complete evidence package to Wesley, along with a message explaining that my cover had been blown. Then I contacted each member of our core group, warning them to be extremely careful about what they said or did at work from now on. Within an hour, I received a formal email from HR requesting my presence at a meeting on Monday morning to discuss your position at Meridian Tech. The trap was set, but they didn't realize that we were several steps ahead of them. Wesley called late Saturday night. "The board meeting was intense," he said, sounding exhausted but determined. 3 of the 7 board members are fully on our side now. 2 are still aligned with TechFusion, and 2 are on the fence, wanting more information before making a decision. Is that enough to stop Monday's announcement? I asked. Not directly, Wesley admitted. But I've taken additional steps. I've formally notified the SEC about potential securities fraud. And my lawyers have prepared injunction paperwork that will be filed first thing Monday morning if TechFusion tries to proceed with the shutdown. Sunday was surreal. I knew that the next day would determine not just my future, but the futures of all 63 Meridian employees. Throughout the day, our core group worked remotely, putting the final pieces of our plan into place. Alex prepared a summary of potential legal violations for employees to reference. Harper compiled details about employee rights during corporate shutdowns. Sam and Taylor reached out discreetly to key clients to warn them about potential service disruptions. I sent one final message to everyone at 8 o'clock Sunday evening. Whatever happens tomorrow, stay calm, stay professional, and remember that we've done nothing wrong. We're standing up for what's right. That night, as I laid out my clothes for what would surely be my last day at Meridian one way or another, I felt strangely calm. For months, I had been living with growing anxiety as I watched the company I loved being systematically destroyed. Now at least everything would be out in the open. The truth would be known. I carefully chose a crisp white blouse and my best blazer professional armor for the battle ahead. Whatever Derek and TechFusion had planned for me, I was ready. As Wesley had said when we last spoke, they think they're setting a trap for you. They don't realize they're walking into one of their own making. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, a beautiful fall day that belied the storm I knew was coming. I arrived at the office 30 minutes early, wanting to be settled and composed before anything began. The security guard at the front desk, Todd, greeted me with his usual friendly nod, giving no indication that anything unusual was expected. "Beautiful day, Miss Martinez," he said as I signed in. "Yes, it is, Todd. I think it's going to be quite memorable." As I walked to my desk, I noticed several unfamiliar faces in the executive area, TechFusion representatives who had flown in for the big announcement, no doubt. James Wilson, the CEO imposed by TechFusion after the acquisition, was speaking quietly with Derek in the conference room, both looking serious and occasionally glancing at their watches. Sam arrived moments later, giving me a subtle nod as he passed. Then Taylor and Harper, each maintaining a casual demeanor while exchanging meaningful glances with me. Alex was the last of our core group to arrive, carrying an extra coffee that he placed on my desk without comment, our prearranged signal that the legal paperwork had been filed. At precisely 9 o'clock, an email arrived from Derek. Mandatory department meeting in the main conference room at 9:30. Attendance is required. Similar messages went out to every department. By 9:25, a nervous energy had filled the office as people speculated about what the meeting might entail. Many seemed to sense that something significant was about to happen, though few could have guessed the true scope of what was planned. At 9:30, I walked calmly to the conference room. It was already crowded, with employees lining the walls after all the seats had been taken. Derek stood at the head of the table, flanked by James and Barbara, along with two people I recognized as TechFusion's HR director and legal counsel. 3 security guards stood discreetly by the door. "Thank you all for coming," James began once everyone had squeezed in. "We have some important organizational announcements to make today." He launched into a clearly rehearsed speech about market realities and strategic pivoting, using corporate jargon to obscure the simple truth that they were shutting down the company. As he spoke, I noticed many of my colleagues shifting uncomfortably, the reality of what was happening slowly dawning on them. "As part of this restructuring," James continued, "we will be consolidating all operations under the TechFusion banner. Unfortunately, this means that many positions at Meridian will be eliminated." A shocked murmur ran through the room. Despite all the warning signs, many employees hadn't truly believed it would come to this. James gestured toward Derek. "Derek will now address some specific departmental changes." Derek stepped forward with a satisfied smile that made my blood boil. This was the moment he had been working toward for months. "Let's start with marketing," he said, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. "As you know, we've been reevaluating our marketing strategies and resource allocations. After careful consideration, we've determined that certain positions are no longer aligned with our new direction." He was dragging it out deliberately, enjoying the power he held over people's livelihoods. I maintained eye contact, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me uncomfortable. Specifically, he continued, we're eliminating your position effective immediately, Josephina. He emphasized my name, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent room. Budget cuts. Your responsibilities will be distributed among the TechFusion marketing team. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch my reaction. I could feel my colleagues' shock, their discomfort, their sympathy. Some looked away, unable to bear witnessing such a public humiliation. Others stared, waiting to see how I would respond to this professional execution. I had known this was coming, had prepared for it, but the reality of being fired in front of everyone still hit hard. For a brief moment, I felt a flash of the anger and hurt that Derek clearly wanted to provoke. But then I remembered everything we had put in motion, and a strange sense of calm washed over me. I stood up slowly, smoothed my blazer, and smiled. Not a nervous smile or a sad one, but a genuine smile that clearly confused Derek. Actually, perfect timing, I replied, my voice steady and confident. Derek's smirk faltered slightly. This was not the reaction he had expected. Not tears, not anger, not pleading. Just 3 simple words that somehow shifted the power dynamic in the room. I calmly collected my personal laptop from the table and looked around at my colleagues, many of whom appeared stunned by both the announcement and my response. Josephina, security will escort you to collect your personal belongings, Derek said, trying to regain control of the situation. No need, I replied. I don't keep personal items at my desk. Corporate policy, you know. I couldn't resist the small dig, reminding everyone of how the warm, personal culture of Meridian had been systematically dismantled by TechFusion's leadership. As I walked toward the door, I heard James continuing with the announcement, his voice slightly less confident than before. We'll be meeting with each department throughout the day to discuss additional structural changes. Todd, the security guard, was waiting outside the conference room, looking distinctly uncomfortable with his assignment to escort me out. I'm sorry about this, Miss Martinez, he said quietly as we walked toward the exit. It doesn't seem right. Don't worry about it, Todd, I assured him. Sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better. He looked confused but nodded respectfully as he held the door open for me. Take care of yourself. You too, Todd. And maybe don't come in tomorrow. Just a suggestion. As soon as I reached my car, I pulled out my phone. First, I called Wesley to confirm that I had been terminated exactly as expected. Perfect, he said. That gives us standing for the wrongful termination claim on top of everything else. The injunction was filed 20 minutes ago. How soon can you get to my lawyer's office? I'm on my way now, I replied. Next, I sent a pre-composed message to our entire core group. Phase 1 complete. Initiating Phase 2. Standard communication protocols now in effect. This meant we would switch to our secure messaging system for all further communications, as we had to assume company email and phones might be monitored. As I drove away from Meridian Tech, possibly for the last time, I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness for what had been lost, anger at the callous way loyal employees were being treated, but mostly determination to see our plan through to the end. Derek and the TechFusion leadership thought they had won. They thought firing me was the end of the story. They had no idea it was just the beginning. The weekend that followed my public firing was the most intense 48 hours of my life. Wesley had arranged for us to use a conference room at his lawyer's office as our base of operations. By noon on Friday, our core team had gathered there, along with Wesley and 3 other board members who had sided with him after seeing our evidence. The first thing we need to do, Wesley's lawyer, Patricia Montgomery, explained, is file these whistleblower reports with the SEC and Department of Justice. She had already prepared the paperwork based on our evidence. The allegations include securities fraud, wire fraud, and potential violations of fiduciary duty. While Patricia handled the legal filings, Wesley was on the phone with the other sympathetic board members, coordinating their response to what was happening. We need to call for a vote of no confidence in the current leadership, he argued. James and his team have clearly been acting against the company's interests. Alex was reviewing every contract and legal document related to the acquisition, looking for leverage. TechFusion violated at least 6 provisions of the acquisition agreement, he reported after a few hours. The most significant being the promise to maintain Meridian as a separate brand and business unit for a minimum of 3 years. Sam and Taylor were reaching out to our most important clients, discreetly informing them of potential service disruptions and reassuring them that solutions were in the works. Anderson Retail is threatening to sue if their systems go down, Sam reported. They're furious about being pressured to switch to TechFusion's platform. Harper was coordinating with the Meridian employees, using a secure messaging system we had set up. Most people are in shock, she told us. They're being called into meetings throughout the day and told that their positions are being evaluated. No one has received official termination notices yet except you, Josephina. I was focused on organizing our media strategy. With Patricia's guidance, I prepared anonymous tips for several technology industry publications and business news outlets, providing enough verifiable information to make the stories credible without compromising our legal position. By Friday evening, the first signs that our counteroffensive was working began to appear. The SEC had acknowledged receipt of our whistleblower report and assigned an investigator. 2 board members had formally requested financial records that TechFusion had previously refused to share, and one technology blog had published a story titled, "Trouble at TechFusion? Questions Surround Meridian Tech Acquisition." We worked late into the night, fueled by determination and takeout food. Around midnight, Wesley received a call from a board member still aligned with TechFusion. "They're getting nervous," he reported after hanging up. "James has called an emergency executive meeting for Saturday morning. They know something's happening, but they're not sure what or how serious it is." Saturday morning brought the first major breakthrough. The judge reviewing our injunction request had granted a temporary restraining order, preventing TechFusion from transferring any more Meridian intellectual property or making major personnel changes until a hearing could be held. "This buys us time," Patricia explained. "They can't proceed with the mass layoffs as planned, at least not legally." Around noon, we received word that James Wilson and several TechFusion executives had arrived at the Meridian office unexpectedly. "They're going through everything," our source reported. "Pulling files, checking computers, interviewing managers. They seem desperate to figure out what's happening." By Saturday afternoon, the story had been picked up by larger technology news sites. TechFusion's PR team released a statement claiming routine business adjustments at Meridian, but it did little to quell the growing speculation. The most satisfying moment came Saturday evening, when Derek called my personal phone. I put it on speaker so everyone in the room could hear. "Josephina," he began, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. "There seems to be some confusion about your departure from Meridian." "No confusion on my part, Derek," I replied calmly. "You fired me in front of the entire company, effective immediately. I believe your exact words were budget cuts." There was a pause before he continued, his tone now conciliatory. "Yes, well, there may have been a miscommunication. We were only planning to restructure your role, not eliminate it entirely. In fact, we'd like to discuss you returning on Monday, possibly with an expanded position and, of course, a significant compensation adjustment." I met Wesley's eyes across the table, and he gave me a subtle nod. We had anticipated they might try something like this once they realized what was happening. "That's an interesting offer, Derek," I said, "especially considering the company-wide restructuring announcement that followed my termination. Are you planning to rescind all the other planned layoffs as well?" His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "Those decisions are still under review," he finally said. "But your situation is different. Your contributions to Meridian have always been valued." "I appreciate the sentiment," I replied, not bothering to hide the skepticism in my voice, "but I think I'll need to consider my options. It's been a confusing couple of days, as you can imagine." "Of course," Derek said quickly. "Take the weekend to think about it. But please, let's talk before you make any decisions or, take any actions you might regret." After I hung up, the room erupted in quiet cheers. "They're panicking," Wesley said with satisfaction. "They've realized something's seriously wrong, but they don't yet understand the full extent of what they're facing." Sunday brought even more progress. 2 more board members had switched sides after reviewing the evidence, giving Wesley's faction a clear majority. The SEC investigator had requested an urgent meeting for Monday morning. And most importantly, our message had reached nearly every Meridian employee through Harper's secure communications network. "What should we tell people about Monday?" Harper asked during our Sunday afternoon strategy session. Everyone's waiting for guidance. We discussed various options before settling on a clear directive. No one should report to the Meridian office on Monday. Instead, they should stay home and await further instructions. "We can't ask people to risk their jobs," I pointed out. "Some might not be able to afford that." "They're not risking anything," Wesley assured me. "With the temporary restraining order in place, TechFusion cannot legally terminate anyone for not coming to work tomorrow, especially after we've documented the hostile work environment they've created." Late Sunday night, as the final pieces of our plan fell into place, my phone rang again. This time it was James Wilson himself, the CEO who had barely spoken 10 words to me during his entire tenure at Meridian. "Miss Martinez," he began formally, "I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding that I'd like to clear up personally." "I'm listening," I replied, again putting the phone on speaker for everyone to hear. "The events of Friday were not handled appropriately," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Derek Barnes acted without full authorization in terminating your position. We value your contributions to Meridian and would like to offer you not only reinstatement, but a promotion to Director of Marketing Strategy, reporting directly to me." The desperation in his voice was evident. By now, they must have realized that something major was happening, though they still didn't seem to comprehend the full scale of what they were facing. "That's a generous offer," I said neutrally. "May I ask what prompted this sudden reevaluation of my value to the company?" There was a pause before James responded. "We've been reviewing the marketing department's performance metrics and realized that your strategies have been more successful than initially assessed. It would be in the company's best interest to retain your expertise." "I see," I replied. "And what about the company-wide restructuring that was announced immediately after my termination? Has that also been reassessed?" Another pause. Longer this time. "We're conducting a comprehensive review of all planned organizational changes. I can assure you that any decisions will be made with careful consideration of all factors." "Thank you for the clarification," I said. "I'll give your offer appropriate consideration and get back to you." After I hung up, Wesley laughed. "They're offering promotions now. Next, they'll be promising stock options and corner offices." "Too little, too late," Sam said, shaking his head. "They still don't get it." As Sunday night turned into early Monday morning, we finalized our preparations. Legal papers were ready to be filed the moment the courts opened. Press releases had been prepared for various scenarios. Every Meridian employee had received instructions to stay home and monitor the secure channel for updates. Just before midnight, I sent one final message to the entire Meridian team. "Tomorrow marks a new beginning. Stay home, stay calm, and know that you're part of something important. The truth will prevail." As I finally lay down to get a few hours of sleep before what promised to be one of the most consequential days of my life, my phone chimed with dozens of replies from colleagues. "Standing with you. We trust you. Thank you for fighting for us." Their faith in me was humbling and strengthening at the same time. Whatever happened tomorrow, I knew we had already won something important. We had reclaimed our dignity and our solidarity in the face of corporate callousness. I set my alarm for 5 a.m, determined to be the first person at the Meridian parking lot to witness what would unfold when TechFusion's leadership arrived to find an empty building and the consequences of their actions waiting for them. I arrived at Meridian's parking lot at 6:30 Monday morning, positioning my car where I could observe the entrance without being immediately visible. The normally busy lot was eerily empty, with only security guard Todd's car present. I had texted him the night before, suggesting he might want to call in sick, but he had replied that he needed the hours. I respected his decision and was actually glad to have a friendly face inside. Wesley pulled up beside me at 7, rolling down his window. "Any activity yet?" "Nothing," I replied, "but the executives usually don't arrive until 8 or later." "Perfect. The SEC team is meeting us here at 7:30. The temporary restraining order has been served electronically to TechFusion's legal department, and physical copies will be delivered here as well." By 7:15, several news vans had begun to gather near the entrance, tipped off by our carefully timed press releases about significant corporate governance issues at Meridian Tech. I watched as reporters set up cameras and microphones, preparing for whatever was about to unfold. The SEC representatives arrived exactly on schedule. 3 serious-looking individuals in business attire who spoke briefly with Wesley before entering the building, showing credentials to Todd at the front desk. At 7:45, our core team gathered in Wesley's car to watch events unfold. Sam, Taylor, Harper, and Alex all looked both anxious and excited as we awaited the arrival of TechFusion's leadership. Derek was the first to arrive, pulling into his reserved parking space at 8 sharp. He noticed the news vans immediately, slowing his walk and eyeing them suspiciously as he approached the entrance. When he entered the building, Todd handed him an envelope, the physical copy of the temporary restraining order. Through the glass front doors, we could see Derek's expression change as he read the document. He pulled out his phone and made a call, gesturing emphatically with his free hand. James Wilson arrived next, accompanied by Barbara Lewis and 2 people I recognized as TechFusion's legal counsel. They hurried into the building, clearly having already been alerted that something was wrong. The federal agents arrived, Taylor reported, reading a text from Todd. They're securing the computer systems and serving subpoenas. By 8:30, the executive lot had filled with luxury cars, but the employee parking area remained completely empty. Not a single Meridian employee had shown up for work. The solidarity was absolute and powerful. At 9 o'clock, Wesley received a call from one of the board members inside. They're in complete disarray, he reported after hanging up. James is trying to contact TechFusion headquarters for guidance, but apparently the CEO is in damage control mode and not taking his calls. Around 9:30, we decided it was time to make our move. Together, our core team walked toward the building, accompanied by Wesley, Patricia, and the other board members who had sided with us. News cameras swung in our direction, and reporters began shouting questions. Mr. Graham, are you resuming control of Meridian Tech? Miss Martinez, were you wrongfully terminated? Is TechFusion under federal investigation? Wesley held up his hand for silence. We'll be making a statement shortly. Right now, we have a company to reclaim. The lobby fell silent as we entered. Todd gave me a subtle thumbs up from behind the security desk. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Derek, James, Barbara, and several other TechFusion executives in what appeared to be a heated discussion with the SEC representatives. When we entered the conference room, James looked up with a mixture of shock and anger. What is the meaning of this? We're in the middle of a private meeting. There's nothing private about corporate fraud, Wesley replied calmly. As majority shareholder and founder of Meridian Tech, I'm here with the board's authorization to address some serious concerns about how this company has been managed under TechFusion's control. Derek's eyes locked with mine, and I saw something I'd never observed in him before. Fear. Josephina, he began. This is all a misunderstanding that we can resolve. Save it, Derek, I interrupted. We have recordings of you discussing Operation Absorb. We have the manipulated financial reports. We have documentation of the intellectual property transfers. The time for misunderstandings is over. The SEC's lead investigator stood up. Mr. Wilson, in light of the evidence we've reviewed and the board's vote of no confidence, we're recommending that all TechFusion appointed executives step back from operational control of Meridian Tech pending our investigation. James looked desperately toward TechFusion's legal counsel, who shook his head slightly, indicating there was little they could do. Derek wasn't ready to concede, however. This is ridiculous. Josephina was terminated for performance issues. She's clearly orchestrated this as revenge. The accusation hung in the air for a moment before I responded. Actually, Derek, I have the recording of you firing me and citing budget cuts as the reason, not performance issues. I also have documentation of my consistently positive performance reviews prior to TechFusion's takeover, including the successful product launch that exceeded targets by 45% just 2 months ago. Derek's face reddened. You can't prove any of this as part of a deliberate strategy. Companies adjust business directions all the time. Wesley calmly placed a printed copy of the Operation Absorb document on the table. Is this what you call a routine business adjustment, Derek? A detailed plan to strip Meridian of its assets, terminate its employees with minimal severance, and absorb its intellectual property into TechFusion? A plan that explicitly states its goal is to eliminate the competitive threat posed by Meridian's small business focus? The room fell silent as the SEC investigators leaned forward to examine the document. Malcolm Jenkins, TechFusion's CEO, chose that moment to finally respond to the crisis, appearing on the conference room's video screen after someone inside had called him. "What the hell is happening there?" he demanded, his face tight with barely controlled anger. Before James could respond, Wesley stepped forward. "Mr. Jenkins, I'm Wesley Graham, founder of Meridian Tech. Your company has systematically violated our acquisition agreement, manipulated financial reports to shareholders, and attempted to illegally transfer intellectual property. Federal investigators are now involved, and the board has voted to remove your appointed management team." Malcolm's expression shifted from anger to calculation. After a moment, he said, "James, Derek, a word in private, please." "I'm afraid that's not possible right now, sir," one of the SEC investigators interrupted. "We're in the middle of serving subpoenas and securing evidence." The reality of the situation finally seemed to dawn on Malcolm. His gaze swept across the room, finally settling on me. "You," he said, recognition in his voice. "You're the marketing person they fired." "Josefina Martinez," I confirmed. "Senior marketing strategist." "At least I was, until Derek eliminated my position due to budget cuts while implementing Operation Absorb." Malcolm was silent for several seconds, clearly reassessing the situation. Then, in a move that shocked everyone, he said, "Derek Barnes, you're terminated, effective immediately." Derek's mouth fell open. "What? But I was following the plan. The plan that you—" "There was no authorized plan to dismantle Meridian Tech," Malcolm interrupted sharply, cutting off what would have been a damning admission. "You clearly took actions beyond your authority that have exposed TechFusion to significant legal and regulatory risk. It was a transparent attempt to create a scapegoat, and everyone in the room knew it." Derek looked like he'd been slapped. "You can't be serious. I have emails from you approving every step of Operation Absorb." "I never approved any operation with that name," Malcolm replied coldly. "James, please escort Mr. Barnes from the building. His severe misconduct has created this unfortunate situation." The desperation on Derek's face turned to fury. "You think you can hang this all on me? I kept every email, every text message, every recording of our planning meetings. I'm not going down alone for following your explicit instructions." As Derek and Malcolm continued their increasingly hostile exchange, Wesley leaned close to me and whispered, "They're turning on each other already. This is working out even better than we anticipated." The SEC investigators were taking detailed notes of the argument, which was providing them with valuable leads for their investigation. By trying to blame Derek, Malcolm was inadvertently confirming that there was indeed something to blame someone for. Eventually, one of the federal agents stepped in to end the chaotic scene. "That's enough. Mr. Barnes, Mr. Wilson, and Miss Lewis will need to remain available for questioning. Mr. Wilson. Jenkins, we'll be scheduling an interview with you as well." As the TechFusion executives were led to separate rooms for initial questioning, Wesley gathered our team and the supportive board members in another conference room. "The first phase is complete," he announced once we were alone. "Now we need to move quickly to stabilize the company and reassure our employees and customers." He turned to me with a serious expression. "Josefina, the board has voted. We want you to take on the role of Chief Strategy Officer to help lead Meridian through this transition and back to independence. Your understanding of our core mission and your loyalty to what this company stands for make you the right person for this critical moment." The offer stunned me. "Chief Strategy Officer? But I've never held an executive position." "Sometimes leadership isn't about previous titles," Wesley replied. "It's about having the courage to stand up for what's right and the vision to see a better path forward. You've demonstrated both." As the implications of Wesley's offer sank in, my phone began buzzing with messages from Meridian employees who had been following updates through our secure channel. They had seen the news reports showing federal agents entering the building and were anxiously awaiting guidance. "What do I tell the team?" Harper asked, showing me her phone filled with similar messages. Wesley and I exchanged glances, and he nodded, deferring to me. In that moment, I realized that regardless of official titles, I had already stepped into a leadership role. Tell them, I said with growing confidence, that Meridian Tech is returning to its roots. Tell them the TechFusion executives have been removed, and Wesley Graham is back in charge with the board's support. Tell them we'll need everyone's help to rebuild, but that their jobs are secure. I paused, then added, and tell them they can come back to the office tomorrow to help us start fresh. As Harper sent the message, I looked around at our small group, the people who had risked their careers to save a company they believed in. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, we were moving in the right direction. There's one more thing we need to address, I said, turning back to Wesley. The clients who've been mistreated during all this. We need to reach out immediately and let them know that Meridian is back and committed to serving them properly again. Wesley smiled. I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think that should be your first official act as Chief Strategy Officer. As we began planning our outreach to clients, news continued to filter in. TechFusion's stock had begun dropping as the story spread. Several major business news outlets had picked up the story of federal investigators raiding their subsidiaries' offices. And most satisfyingly, Derek was being escorted from the building, box in hand, experiencing exactly the same walk of shame he had inflicted on so many others. The difference was, while I had walked out saying perfect timing with a plan already in motion, Derek left with nothing but the personal items from his desk, and the knowledge that he had been sacrificed to protect executives who wouldn't hesitate to deny everything he claimed. Justice, it seemed, sometimes arrives with perfect timing of its own. 1 month after what employees now jokingly called Empty Office Monday, I stood in front of the assembled Meridian Tech team in our newly redesigned community space. The corporate-style conference room had been transformed into a collaborative environment with comfortable seating, whiteboards covering the walls, and a general sense of openness that reflected our renewed company culture. I want to thank everyone for your incredible work over these past 4 weeks, I began, looking around at the familiar faces that had been through so much together. When I said perfect timing as I walked out of this building, I had faith in all of you that you would recognize the value of what we built together and would fight to preserve it. You exceeded every expectation. The journey back hadn't been easy. Disentangling Meridian from TechFusion required complex legal negotiations, system migrations, and countless late nights. But the energy and commitment everyone brought to the task made even the most challenging days feel purposeful. Wesley had officially resumed the role of CEO, with the board's unanimous support. His first official act had been to confirm my appointment as Chief Strategy Officer, a position I initially felt overwhelmed by but grew into with each passing day. Our client retention stands at 96%, I continued, referencing the slides displayed on the large screen behind me. Many have specifically cited your personal outreach and support during the transition as the reason they chose to stay with Meridian. That connection, that genuine relationship with the people who use our software is something TechFusion never understood or valued. The legal consequences for TechFusion had been swift and significant. The SEC investigation had expanded to include their acquisitions of other companies, revealing a pattern of predatory behavior. 3 executives, including Malcolm Jenkins, had been forced to resign. Derek, true to his threat, had turned over extensive evidence in exchange for immunity from prosecution, becoming the star witness in cases against his former bosses. TechFusion's stock had fallen 32% since the scandal broke, while Meridian, now operating independently again, was experiencing record growth. The story of the employee walkout and subsequent revelations had garnered national attention, sparking conversations about corporate ethics and employee solidarity. As you all know, today marks the official completion of our separation from TechFusion, I announced. The final paperwork was signed this morning. Meridian Tech is once again an independent company, with a renewed commitment to our original mission, helping small businesses thrive in a digital world. The room erupted in applause and cheers. For many, this moment represented not just professional victory but personal vindication, proof that standing up for what was right could actually work. But independence brings responsibility, I continued once the celebration quieted. Wesley and the board have asked me to share our vision for ensuring Meridian remains true to its values and protected from similar takeover attempts in the future. I outlined the three-part plan we had developed. First, a new corporate structure that included significant employee ownership, giving the team both a financial stake in the company's success and voting rights on major decisions. Second, legal protections that would make hostile takeovers nearly impossible without employee and founder approval. And third, a renewed commitment to the small business market that had always been Meridian's strength. We're not just recovering what was nearly lost, I explained. We're building something better, a company that reflects what we've learned through this experience about the importance of transparency, shared purpose, and mutual respect. After the presentation, as people broke into discussion groups to provide feedback on the new initiatives, Wesley joined me by the refreshment table. Quite a journey from senior marketing strategist to helping rebuild an entire company, he observed. How are you feeling about everything? I considered the question carefully. Grateful, primarily, for the opportunity, for the team's trust, for the chance to create something meaningful from what could have been a disaster. And Derek? Wesley asked. Any lingering feelings about how that played out? The question gave me pause. Derek's face had been all over business news in recent weeks as details of TechFusion's practices emerged. He'd lost his reputation, his career prospects, and possibly faced legal consequences despite his cooperation with investigators. I don't feel sorry for him, I finally said. He made choices knowing they would hurt people who had done nothing wrong. But I've also realized something important. Derek wasn't just a villain in this story. He was also a cautionary tale. Wesley raised an eyebrow. How so? He compromised his integrity for corporate advancement, believing the system would reward his loyalty. In the end, the same system he served discarded him the moment he became inconvenient. I shook my head. I don't want Meridian to ever create that kind of toxic dynamic, where people feel pressured to choose between their ethics and their careers. Wesley nodded thoughtfully. That's precisely why the board has so much confidence in your leadership. You understand that building a successful company and building an ethical one aren't separate goals. They're the same goal. 6 months after Empty Office Monday, we held a company celebration to mark Meridian's official relaunch. Our product line had been restored and improved, incorporating user feedback that had previously been ignored under TechFusion. Our client base had not only recovered but grown by 22%. Most meaningfully to me, we had implemented an ethics framework that embedded our values into every aspect of the business, from hiring practices to client relationships to product development. The Meridian principles, as they became known, were displayed prominently in our office and referenced regularly in decision-making at all levels. During the celebration, several former colleagues approached me with similar stories, how the experience had changed their perspective on their careers, how they discovered courage they didn't know they had, how they now evaluated potential employers based on values rather than just compensation. Taylor, who had been promoted to Customer Success Director, summed it up best. Before all this happened, I thought my job was just a job. Now I understand it's also a choice about what kind of world I want to help create. As the evening wound down, Wesley called for attention and raised his glass in a toast. To Josephina, he said, who taught us all that sometimes the perfect response to "we're restructuring your role" is simply perfect timing, especially when you've already set a better plan in motion. The room filled with laughter and applause as I felt my face flush with embarrassment and pride. Later, as I drove home, I reflected on the incredible journey of the past 6 months. From the fear and uncertainty of discovering TechFusion's plans, through the intensity of gathering evidence and building alliances, to the dramatic confrontation and subsequent rebuilding, it had been the most challenging and rewarding period of my professional life. I had entered the corporate world believing that success meant climbing a predefined ladder in established companies. What I'd learned instead was that true success comes from building something worthwhile with people you respect, guided by principles you believe in. When I had walked out of that conference room saying perfect timing, I hadn't fully understood how perfect the timing truly was, not just for exposing TechFusion's schemes, but for transforming my own understanding of what was possible when people united around a shared purpose. The empty office that Monday morning hadn't represented the end of something valuable, as TechFusion had intended. Instead, it had marked the beginning of something far better, a company rebuilt on a foundation of integrity, collaboration, and genuine respect for both employees and customers. In the world of corporate mergers and acquisitions, what happened at Meridian Tech became a case study in business schools and a warning to predatory corporations. But for those of us who lived through it, it was something more personal. Proof that sometimes standing your ground isn't just the right thing to do, it can also be the perfect strategic move. Have you ever faced a moment when standing up for your principles seemed risky, but turned out to be exactly the right decision? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in this journey we shared together, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes. The perfect response to unexpected challenges is simply perfect timing. Thank you for being part of this story, and I wish you the courage to recognize your own perfect timing when it arrives.